The large alien ship hung in Earth's orbit like a shiny metal whale. On the bridge of the much smaller Earth ship Audacity Captain Jung Kim straightened his uniform and looked at his crew. "Remember," he said, "this is the first time humans meet aliens. Let's make a good first impression." His first officer, Minna, nodded. "The whole world is watching, Captain." June took a deep breath. The past week had been crazy. A giant ship had appeared near the moon, sent a message in perfect English, and asked to meet Earth's leaders. Somehow, June and his crew had been picked for this job. "Open the docking bay," he ordered. The Audacity was the pride of Earth's small space fleet. It wasn't built for war or deep space travel. It was made to move between Earth and the moon base. But today, it carried Earth's hopes into the stars. As the ship entered the alien vessel's massive docking area, Jung saw creatures waiting for them. They stood on 4 legs with 2 arms, their skin blue-green and shiny. They wore what looked like formal clothes with many shiny badges. "Showtime," Jung said. Ambassador Kelthor of the Galactic Council had studied humans for months. They were a young species, just beginning space travel. The Council had strict rules about meeting new species. First, watch them. Then, when they reached a certain point in development, make contact. Humans had reached that point last year. "The Earth vessel is docking," his assistant reported. "Excellent," Kelthor said. "Remember, they are primitive but show promise. They might be startled by our appearance." His team of 10 representatives stood in perfect formation. Each was chosen to represent the Council's dignity and power. They had practiced the formal greeting ritual for days. The human ship looked small and simple. Kelthor felt a mix of pity and hope. Every species started somewhere. When the airlock opened, June led his team of 5 into the alien ship. The air smelled strange but breathable. The aliens stood in a perfect line, not moving. "Greetings from Earth," Jun said, using the words the world's leaders had agreed on. The lead alien stepped forward. It was tall, almost 7 feet, with 4 eyes that blinked in pairs. "Welcome, humans," it said in clear English. "I am Ambassador Kelthor of the Galactic Council. We are pleased to officially welcome Earth to the galactic community." The formal words were exactly what they had practiced for, but then the script ended. And humans, being humans, fell back on tradition. "This calls for a celebration," Jun said, smiling wide. He turned to his crew. "Bring out the welcome package." Mina opened a case they had brought. Inside were bottles of champagne, glasses, and snacks from Earth. The aliens watched with all 4 eyes wide as Jun popped open a bottle with a loud noise. "A tradition from Earth," Jun explained as the drink foamed. "We share food and drink with new friends." The aliens looked at each other with what seemed like confusion. Kelthor stepped forward carefully. "You wish to consume chemicals as part of greeting." "Just a toast," Jun said, pouring glasses, "to new friendships among the stars." The crew cheered. The aliens watched in silence as the humans drank. Then Jun had an idea. "Let me show you a traditional Earth greeting dance." He handed his glass to Mina. "Hold my beer." Those 3 words, though simple, would become famous across the galaxy. What followed was something the aliens would later describe in reports as alarming physical convulsions. Jun, who had won his college breakdance competition 3 years running, began to spin and twist on the floor of the alien ship. His crew cheered him on while the aliens backed away slowly. By the time Jun finished with a perfect freeze pose, 1 arm supporting his whole body, Ambassador Kelthor was already sending an urgent message to the Council. "Humans are not what we expected. Request immediate guidance. They appear to poison themselves for pleasure and perform physical feats for no tactical reason. Approach with caution." And so began humanity's entrance into galactic society. Sun Park's office on the Galactic Council space station was too small for all the papers on her desk. As chief human liaison to the Galactic Council, Her job was to explain humans to aliens. Today, that job was extra hard. You let them do what? Asked Council Member Zivtik. The tall, thin alien skin turned a deeper shade of purple with each word. Sun took a deep breath. The mining colony on asteroid K42 found a new way to extract rare metals. They increased production by 300% in just 1 week. By ignoring every safety rule we gave them. Zivtik's 4 arms waved in the air. They removed the cooling systems. They replaced them with a water spray system. Sun explained. It works better and costs less. It is not approved. It is not tested. It is not in the manual. Sun tried not to sigh. After 3 months as humanity's representative, she was used to these talks. Aliens liked rules. Humans liked results. The miners tested it themselves, she said. Tested. They sprayed water on hot machinery and said looks good when it didn't explode. Zivtik's voice was so high now that the translator had trouble keeping up. Sun couldn't argue with that. The report from the mining colony had been short. Found a better way. Production up. All good. Later that day, Sun called the mining colony. The face of Chief Miner Daho appeared on the screen. His helmet was dirty, and he looked tired but happy. Sun, good to see you. How's life with the aliens? Complicated, she said. The council is upset about your cooling system. Day laughed. Those fancy cooling units they sent us kept breaking. Too delicate for real mining. Our water system is simple and works great. It breaks 17 different safety regulations. But it works. Day spread his hands. We've sent 3 times more ore back to Earth. Isn't that what matters? Sun rubbed her forehead. The council cares about doing things the right way. The safe way. We are safe, Da insisted. No accidents. Well, except when Joe tried to ride one of the mining robots down the big tunnel. But that was after work hours. Sun's eyes widened. He did what? He's fine. Just a broken arm. Said it was worth it. Sun made a note to never, ever mention this to the council. The next day, Sun faced the full Galactic Safety Committee. 12 aliens from different species looked down at her from tall seats. We have reviewed the human mining situation, said the chairperson, a blue-skinned alien named Sorla. We are concerned about more than just the cooling systems. Sun nodded, waiting for the bad news. Humans work too many hours without rest. They consume stimulants to stay awake. They make modifications to equipment without permission. They take unnecessary risks. We get the job done, Sun said. At what cost? Asked Torla. Our studies show humans ignore pain, continue working with injuries, and treat dangerous situations as fun. Sun thought about how to explain. Humans push limits. It's how we learn and grow. It's how you die, said another committee member. Sometimes, Sun admitted, but it's also how we've survived on Earth. We try things. We adapt. We overcome. The aliens whispered among themselves. Finally, Torla spoke again. The committee has decided to create a new category of regulations for humans only. We will allow some flexibility if you agree to basic safety measures. Sun smiled. It was a start. As she left the meeting, her communication device beeped. A message from a human science team on another planet. Found interesting glowing fungus. Might be toxic. We'll try small sample to check. Update soon. Sun closed her eyes and counted to 10. Tomorrow would bring new regulation problems. But for today, she had won a small victory for humanity's way of doing things. Even if that way was, as the aliens kept saying, completely crazy. Commander Hannah Lee wiped sweat from her forehead and looked at the radar screen again. 5 enemy ships were coming toward the small mining colony on planet Novus. They would arrive in less than 6 hours. Any word from the Galactic Defense Force? She asked her communications officer. Yes, Commander. They say help will come in 3 days. Hannah slammed her fist on the table. 3 days. We'll be dead in 3 hours after those Vesperi ships get here. The Vesperi were bug-like aliens known for attacking weak targets. They had probably chosen this colony because humans were new to space. They thought humans would be easy to beat. Hannah looked around the small command room. She had no warships, no trained soldiers, just 30 miners with basic weapons and some mining equipment. "Get all miners to the main hall now," she ordered, "and bring me the colony maps and equipment lists." 2 hours later, Hannah stood before the colony's miners. They were dirty, tough men and women who dug tunnels deep into the planet looking for valuable metals. "The Vesperi think we're weak because we're new to the galaxy," Hannah told them. "They'll learn they're wrong." A tall miner named Quan raised his hand. "Commander, we're not soldiers. We dig holes." Hannah smiled. "Exactly. And today, those holes will save us." She showed them her plan on a big screen. The miners looked at each other, then started to grin. "That's crazy," said Quan. "Crazy enough to work?" asked Hannah. Quan nodded slowly. "Let's dig." The Vesperi captain clicked his mandibles with excitement as his ships approached the human colony. These humans were new to space. Their colony had no real defenses. It would be an easy victory. "Scan for defense systems," he ordered. "Nothing, Captain," replied his second-in-command. "Just basic shields. No weapons that can hurt our ships." "Perfect. Prepare landing parties. We'll take their resources and slaves." The 5 Vesperi ships moved into position above the colony, their green hulls shining in the planet's sunlight. They expected surrender messages. Instead, there was silence. "Send the first wave," ordered the captain. Hannah watched from a hidden bunker as the first Vesperi landing ships touched down. The bug-like aliens poured out, weapons ready. They moved toward the colony buildings, which appeared empty. "Wait for it," she whispered into her radio. All around the landing area, miners hidden in tunnels waited for her signal. The Vesperi reached the main building. They broke down the door. "Now," Hannah shouted. Across the landing area, the ground suddenly collapsed. The miners had dug tunnels under the hard surface, creating a giant trap. Vesperi soldiers fell into deep holes. At the same time, mining explosives detonated, creating confusion. From hidden spots, miners used drilling equipment modified into weapons. They weren't elegant, but they worked. A laser drill could cut through Vesperi armor just as well as it cut through rock. Hannah led a team that targeted the landed ships. They attached mining explosives to the engines, then ran for cover. "Fire in the hole," she yelled as the explosives went off. 3 Vesperi ships erupted in flames. The Vesperi, expecting easy victory, found chaos instead. They had no plan for fighting enemies who popped out of the ground, used mining tools as weapons, and seemed to enjoy the danger. 3 days later, when the Galactic Defense Force finally arrived, they found a surprising scene. The colony was damaged but standing. 4 Vesperi ships were destroyed. The 5th had fled. Inside the main hall, they found the miners celebrating. Many were injured. Some had bandages. All were drinking something that smelled strong. Hannah greeted the Galactic Defense Force commander with a smile and a bandaged arm. "You're late to the party," she said. The alien commander looked around in shock. "How did you defeat a Vesperi attack force with mining equipment?" Hannah took a drink from her cup, wincing as the movement hurt her injured shoulder. "Turns out," she said, "if you know how to dig tunnels, you also know how to make things collapse. And if you can cut through solid rock, you can cut through pretty much anything." The alien commander shook his head in disbelief. "Plus," Hannah added with a grin, "they really didn't expect us to fight back. That was their first mistake." Dr. Jin Song looked at the strange fungus growing in the sealed container. It glowed with a soft blue light. According to the computer, it was extremely dangerous. The Galactic Science Academy had listed it as Morkai fungus, deadly to all known species. "What do you think?" asked his research partner, Dai-Yun, who stood safely behind 3 layers of protective glass. Jin tapped the container. I think it's beautiful. They were in the science lab on Research Station 7, a place where scientists from all species studied new life forms. Jin was the only human scientist there. The others thought humans were too reckless. The Academy says we need to study it from a distance, Dai said. No direct contact. Jin watched the fungus pulse with light. His scanner showed it released spores, tiny floating parts that could spread and grow elsewhere. The spores were the dangerous part. We won't learn enough that way, Jin said. He rubbed his chin. I need to see how it reacts to different conditions. Jin, no, Dai said in a warning voice. Remember the safety rules. Jin smiled. Rules are just suggestions. The next day, Jin set up a row of small containers. Each had a piece of the fungus in different environments. Hot, cold, wet, dry. He wore a protective suit but stayed much closer to the samples than the rules allowed. Dai watched nervously from the other side of the lab. The alien scientists will report you if they see this. Then they shouldn't look, Jin said. He leaned closer to one container. That's interesting. The fungus in the warm, wet container was growing faster and glowing brighter. Jin moved his face close to the clear lid, watching the beautiful patterns. Then he sneezed. The sudden movement caused his hand to hit the container. The lid popped open just a little, just enough for some spores to escape. Jin felt them land on his face before he could close the container and step back. Jin, Dai shouted, you've been exposed. Jin looked at his friend calmly. Yes, I have. He took out a small recorder. Starting log of human exposure to Morkai fungus. Time is 14:22 station time. Dai stared in horror. You need to get to medical now. After I set up the monitoring equipment, Jin said, this is a unique research opportunity. 3 hours later, Jin lay in a sealed medical pod. His skin had started to glow slightly blue. Strange patterns spread across his arms. The alien doctor stood far away, watching through screens. You should be dead, said the head doctor, a 6-armed alien named Dr. Xith. No one survives Morkai exposure. Humans might be different, Jin said. He held up his recorder. I'm documenting all symptoms. The burning sensation started in my fingers and moved up my arms. Interesting fact. The patterns follow my nerve pathways. Dr. Xith shook all 6 of his hands in frustration. This is not a research project. This is your life. Jin nodded. Exactly. And I'm using it for science. Dai worked frantically at a nearby lab station. Jin's different body chemistry is reacting with the fungus. He explained to the alien doctors. His immune system is fighting it in a way we've never seen. Jin began to shake with fever. Still, he kept recording notes. Even as the pain grew worse, he described each symptom in detail. The aliens watched in horror and fascination. The fungus is targeting my nerve endings, Jin said, his voice weak. But something in human blood seems to slow it down. Dai, try mixing my blood sample with the anti-inflammatory compound we developed last month. 2 days later, Jin sat up in his bed, still glowing faintly but very much alive. The treatment Dai had created based on Jin's suggestions had worked. Dr. Xith and a group of alien scientists stared at him in disbelief. You used yourself as a test subject, Dr. Xith said. You risked death. And now we have a cure, Jin replied. Plus, I discovered the fungus can bond with nerve cells without killing them. Think of the medical applications. The Galactic Science Academy sent a new set of safety protocols the next week. Everyone called them the Jin Rules. Rule number 1. No scientist shall intentionally expose themselves to deadly substances, no matter how interesting the results might be. Jin just smiled when he read it. Rules, after all, were just suggestions. The Krell arena was huge. Thousands of aliens sat in seats that circled a sandy fighting ring. The Krell, Massive four-armed aliens with thick gray skin were the physical champions of the galaxy. Each year, they held a strength contest and invited all species to compete. Most species sent polite notes saying, "No thanks." The few brave ones who tried always lost badly. This year was different. Humans had joined the galactic community, and humans never said no to a challenge. A human competitor approaches the arena. The announcer's voice boomed. The crowd turned to look. Many laughed when they saw her. Mina Kang was small even for a human. She was an engineer, not a fighter. She walked into the arena wearing a simple exercise outfit and a bright smile. The head Krell champion, Gertak, stood nearly 3 times her height. His 4 massive arms could bend metal. He looked down at Mina and made a sound that might have been a laugh. "This is your champion," he asked the human officials. Captain Jum Kim nodded from the sidelines. Mina volunteered. "She's very resourceful." Gertak shook his huge head. "She will be crushed." Mina stretched her arms and smiled at the giant alien. "Let's have some fun." The first challenge was lifting. Gertak easily lifted a metal bar loaded with weights that would crush most beings. The crowd cheered. When Mina's turn came, she studied the weights. Instead of trying to lift them the same way, she built a simple lever system using parts from the arena. With the lever, she was able to move the weights with much less strength. The crowd went quiet. "That is not the traditional method," the Krell judge said. "You said lift the weights," Mina replied. "You didn't say how." After a heated discussion, the judges allowed it. The crowd buzzed with surprise. The second challenge was breaking stone blocks. Gertak smashed through his with a powerful punch. Mina looked at her block, then pulled a small tool from her pocket. "What is that?" demanded a judge. "A sonic resonator. I built it myself," Mina said. She pointed it at the stone and turned it on. The block vibrated, then cracked perfectly down the middle. The crowd went wild. The Krell judges looked at each other in confusion. "She is using technology, not strength," Gertak complained. "Technology is human strength," Mina replied. "We build tools to solve problems." The final challenge was wrestling. This, surely, the tiny human could not win. Gertak stood ready in the center ring. Mina approached carefully. When the signal sounded, the giant alien reached for her. What happened next amazed everyone. Mina ducked under his arms, moved quickly to his side, and used his own momentum to trip him. As Gertak tried to stand, she applied pressure to specific points on his joints. Somehow, the tiny human had the massive champion pinned. "How?" Gertak asked when the match ended. "Physics and leverage," Mina explained. "Plus, I studied your biology. Every strong point has a weak counterpart." That evening, a new phrase began spreading through the station. "I bet a human could do it." It was used for impossible tasks, crazy ideas, and hopeless situations. In the human quarters, Mina sat with her friends, nursing a sore shoulder. "The Krell ambassador invited us to dinner," Captain June told her. "They want to learn more about human battle techniques." Mina laughed. "I just used science. Every problem has a solution if you look at it the right way." "That's what scares them," June said. "Other species train for years to build strength. You just changed the rules of the game." "Is that bad?" Mina asked. June shook his head. "It's very human, and the galaxy is learning that humans don't play by the expected rules." Mina grinned as she stood up. "Well, I'm hungry after all that winning. Let's go show the Krell how humans celebrate victory." The other species in the galaxy were learning an important lesson. Never underestimate humans, especially the small ones with big smiles and clever ideas. Tai Ryung liked games. As a human diplomat on Galactic Station Alpha, his job was to help aliens understand humans. He found that games worked better than talks. Today, he sat across from 4 members of the Xintal, a hive mind species that shared one consciousness across many bodies. They looked like tall, thin humans with silver skin and no hair. All Xintol thought the same thoughts at the same time. They never kept secrets from each other. They never lied. "I will teach you a human game called poker," Ta said, shuffling cards. The 4 Xintol bodies tilted their heads in exactly the same way. "What is the purpose of this game?" they asked in perfect unison. "Fun," said Ta, "and to learn about each other." The Xintol blinked together. "We already know everything about each other. We are one mind." Ta smiled. "That's what will make this interesting." 2 hours later, the Xintol were still trying to understand the concept of bluffing. "You mean humans say things that are not true during this game?" asked the first Xintol body. "And the others must guess if they are lying?" asked the second. "And this is fun?" asked the third. The 4th Xintol body had been quiet for some time. It looked at its cards, then at the other Xintol, then back at its cards. "I will raise," it said, pushing chips forward. The other 3 Xintol bodies jerked their heads to stare at the 4th. This had never happened before. A single Xintol body had never made a decision without the others. "We fold," the other 3 said together, still staring at the 4th. Ta watched with interest as the 4th Xintol showed its cards, a very poor hand. "I bluffed," it said, sounding surprised at its own actions. "I had a thought. That was only mine." By the next day, the diplomatic offices were in chaos. The Xintol ambassador had called an emergency meeting. Ta sat nervously as his boss, head diplomat Lai, paced the room. "Let me understand this," Lai said. "You taught the Xintol to play poker." "Yes," said Ta. "And now one Xintol body has disconnected from their hive mind." "Not completely," Ta explained. "It still shares thoughts, but it's also thinking independently. It wants to be called 7 now." Lai rubbed his face. "The Xintol have existed as a single consciousness for 10,000 years. In one day you broke that." "I didn't mean to," Ta said. "I just wanted to show them how humans think. By teaching them to lie. By teaching them that sometimes it's okay to have private thoughts. To be an individual." Lai sighed. "The Xintol Council is demanding an explanation." When Tai entered the Xintol ship, he expected anger. Instead, he found 7 sitting alone, shuffling cards. "The others are talking about reconnecting me fully to the hive mind," 7 said. "Removing the separation. I'm sorry if I cause problems," Ta said. 7 looked up. "Don't be sorry. I have experienced something no Xintol has felt in millennia. Independence. Privacy. The joy of surprising others." 7 dealt 2 cards to Ta. "I have been teaching the others poker. Many are curious about having individual thoughts." Ta picked up his cards. "Is that a good thing?" "It is a new thing," 7 replied. "The Xintol have not changed in thousands of years. Perhaps it is time we evolved." When the Xintol Council finally arrived, they found Ta and 7 teaching poker to 20 more Xintol. Each was trying to develop their own poker face. That evening, the Galactic Council created a new rule specifically for human diplomats. No teaching of games that involve deception to hive mind species. Ta was called to a meeting with the Council the next day. "Your species has been in the galaxy for less than a year," said the head counselor. "Already you have changed mining practices, defense strategies, scientific protocols, and now the fundamental nature of a 10,000-year-old species." Ta waited for punishment. Instead, the counselor sighed. "The Xintol Council has requested more human cultural exchanges. It seems they find your species refreshing." As Ta left the council chambers, he heard 7 teaching another Xintol a new phrase. "Hold my drink and watch this." The galaxy was definitely getting messier with humans around. But perhaps, Ta thought, a little mess was exactly what some species needed. The emergency meeting room on Galactic Station Prime was filled with worried aliens. On the big screen, Dark shapes moved through space toward populated systems. These were the void entities, ancient beings made of dark energy that consumed everything in their path. "We must retreat," said the Zilak's representative, his tentacles waving nervously. "Abandon the outer colonies." "Agreed," said the Morke diplomat. "The void entities cannot be stopped." Admiral Jun Wang of the Human Defense Fleet listened quietly. He had been in space for only 2 years, but had already earned respect for his unusual battle tactics. Now, watching the alien leaders plan to run away, he frowned. "Has anyone ever tried to fight them?" Jun asked. The room went quiet. The alien representatives stared at him. "Fight the void entities." The Galactic Council leader's voice was shocked. "That is suicide." Jun stood up and walked to the screen. "Maybe. But has anyone tried?" "No," admitted the council leader. "They absorb energy weapons. Physical weapons pass through them. They are unstoppable." Jun studied the screen, watching the dark shapes move. "Nothing is unstoppable," he said. "Everything has a weakness." Later, in the human quarters, Jun met with his team. Maps and data filled the screens around them. "The council voted to retreat," Jun told them. "They're giving up 15 colonies with millions of people." "But we're not going to let that happen," said his second-in-command, CO. Jun smiled. "No, we're not." He pointed to the map. "The void entities move in a specific pattern. They're attracted to energy sources, stars, reactor cores, power plants. That's why they're heading to the colonies." "So what's the plan?" asked CO. Jun's smile grew wider. "We're going to give them something more interesting to chase." The next day, Jun presented his plan to the council. They called it definitively suicidal direct engagement. "You want to fly ships directly at the void entities." The council leader's voice was high with disbelief. "Not just any ships," Jun explained. "We've modified 20 vessels with special reactors that pulse with energy, like bait." "And then what?" "The entities will consume the ships and continue." "Maybe," Jun said. "Or maybe we'll learn something about how they feed. No one has ever watched them up close." The council rejected his plan as too dangerous, but they couldn't stop him from trying. That night, 20 human ships left the station without permission. They called their mission the Beer Run, a joke based on the now famous human phrase. Jun sat on the bridge of his ship, watching the void entities grow larger on the screen. Dark, flowing shapes like living smoke. His crew worked calmly around him, adjusting the reactor to pulse with energy. "They've noticed us," reported CO. "They're changing course." "Good," said Jun. "Get ready to record every detail of how they react to different energy frequencies." The plan was simple but dangerous. Each ship would test different energy outputs to see if any harmed or repelled the entities. Most likely, all ships would be lost, but the data might save millions. "First entity approaching," called CO. "It's moving fast." Jun watched as the dark shape enveloped a nearby ship. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, something unexpected. The entity seemed to pause, its form shuddering. "They're vulnerable to radiation frequency 372, shouted the science officer. "Look at the readings." Jun ordered all ships to adjust their reactors to that frequency. The entity that had touched the first ship was pulling back, its form less solid. "Push forward," Jun ordered. "Full power on that frequency." 3 days later, Jun's remaining ships returned to Galactic Station Prime. 5 had been lost, but 15 survived. And they brought amazing news. The void entities were vulnerable to a specific radiation frequency that disrupted their form. The council was stunned. No one had ever driven back the entities before. "How did you know this would work?" asked the council leader. Jun shrugged. "I didn't, but everything has a weakness. You just have to be willing to look for it." "Even if that means risking your life?" asked an alien diplomat. "Sometimes you have to," Jun said. "We call it taking one for the team." As news spread through the galaxy that the unstoppable void entities had been stopped by humans, a new respect grew for these strange, reckless beings who rushed into danger when everyone else ran away. The beer run became famous as the mission that saved entire worlds because humans wouldn't take impossible for an answer. Yeona Choi loved adventure. Before humans joined the galactic community, she had climbed Earth's highest mountains and dived in its deepest oceans. Now, as a media producer in space, she had a whole galaxy of dangerous places to explore. "Are you sure this is safe?" asked her camera operator, Da, as they prepared to land on planet Infernus. Yeona checked her heat-resistant suit. "Of course not. That's what makes it good television." Planet Infernus had rivers of liquid metal and rain made of glass. No intelligent species had evolved there. The Galactic Travel Advisory listed it as completely unsuitable for visitation. To Yeona, that sounded like a challenge. Her show, Extreme Environments, was now the most watched program in the galaxy. Each episode showed Yeona visiting places other species considered too dangerous to approach. She collected samples, conducted experiments, and occasionally ran for her life when things went wrong. Aliens couldn't understand why she did it. Humans couldn't get enough of it. "Welcome to Infernus," Yeona shouted into her camera as she stepped onto the planet's surface. Behind her, rivers of molten metal flowed between black rock formations. The sky glowed red with heat. "The temperature outside my suit is over 900 degrees, she said, walking toward the nearest river of metal. "I'm going to collect a sample to see what elements we're dealing with." Dade followed with the camera, his voice nervous through the communication system. "We have 5 minutes before the ship says our suits will fail." "Plenty of time," Yeona said with a smile. She reached the river's edge and carefully extended a collection tool. How hard could it be? As she spoke those words, a bubble in the metal river burst, sending tiny droplets flying. One landed on her sleeve, instantly burning through the outer layer of her suit. "Time to go," she yelled, running back toward the ship. Viewers across the galaxy watched as Yeona and Day escaped with seconds to spare, the sample secured despite the danger. In her studio on Galactic Station Prime, Yeona reviewed messages from her fans. Most were from humans, but a growing number came from other species. "I never knew exploring dangerous places could be so fascinating," wrote a Zulax viewer. "Your courage is illogical but impressive," wrote a member of the logical Tark species. The most surprising message came from a group of 15 different species requesting to join her on future expeditions. They called themselves adventure tourists and wanted to experience danger firsthand, human style. "This is a terrible idea," said the Galactic Safety Director when Yeona proposed taking alien guests on her show. "Probably," Yeona agreed. "But they're adults who can make their own choices. They don't understand the risks like humans do." Yeona smiled. "Then my show will help them learn." 3 months later, Yeona stood on an ice moon orbiting a gas giant. Beside her were 5 aliens from different species, all wearing special suits designed for their unique bodies. "Today we're exploring the ice caves of Glacius Prime," Yeona told the camera. "These caves have never been mapped because they constantly change as the ice shifts." "Is this safe?" asked a nervous Morkai representative, his thin body shivering despite the suit. "Definitely not," Yeona replied cheerfully. "That's the point. We'll be making the first ever map as we go." As they entered the glittering ice cave, the aliens moved carefully. But by the time they reached the beautiful crystal chamber at the center, they were pointing out features with excitement rather than fear. When a sudden ice shift blocked their exit path, Yeona simply said, "Let's find another way," and led them through a narrow passage none of the aliens would have dared try before. Back on the station, the Galactic Council created a new department, Extreme Tourism Regulation. Its sole purpose was to manage the growing number of aliens wanting to vacation like humans. Yeona's catchphrase, "How hard could it be?" became both a popular saying and a warning sign in equal measure throughout the galaxy. When asked why her show was so popular, Yelena explained, "Most species see danger as something to avoid. Humans see it as something to overcome. And it turns out, that's a thrill everyone can learn to enjoy." 5 years had passed since humans first joined the galactic community. Admiral Jum Kim, once just a captain, now stood before the Galactic Council on the anniversary of Earth's admission. He wore his formal uniform with the new medals he had earned during the Void Entity Crisis. The Great Council chamber was filled with representatives from every species. 5 years ago, they had watched with horror as Jum breakdanced on the floor of an alien ship after saying, "Hold my beer." Today, they listened with respect. 5 years ago, we were strangers, Jum began. You thought humans were crazy. Maybe we are. Soft laughter rippled through the room. Even the council members smiled. But in these 5 years, we've learned from each other, Jum continued. Humans have learned that sometimes following safety rules isn't such a bad idea. He raised his glass in a toast. Several council members reached for their emergency medical kits, remembering what happened last time a human proposed a toast in this chamber. And you've learned that sometimes breaking the rules is the only way forward, Jum finished. The alien representatives nodded. They had seen humans save colonies, defeat enemies, find cures, and explore dangerous places, all by doing things differently than expected. After the ceremony, Jun walked through the space station with Sun Park, now the head of human-alien relations. "We've come a long way," Sun said. "Remember when the Galactic Safety Committee wanted to ban all human mining techniques?" Jun laughed. Now they're teaching modified versions in engineering schools across the galaxy. They passed a viewport where they could see ships coming and going. Human vessels flew alongside alien ships. Some ships had mixed crews, something unheard of 5 years ago. The Joint Human-Alien Expeditionary Force leaves next week, Sun said. Admiral Jun is leading it. They're using his crazy tactics, modified to be slightly less crazy, Sun said with a smile. But yes, the other species have admitted that sometimes the direct approach works best. In the station's central plaza, they passed Dr. Jin Song teaching a class. The students were from 15 different species, all learning about human medical techniques. Jin still glowed faintly blue from his encounter with the Morkai fungus years ago. Nearby, Mina Kang was demonstrating human martial arts to a group of young Krell. The once proud warriors were now eager to learn how a small being could defeat a larger one using leverage and physics. In a popular restaurant, diplomat Tai Ryung sat playing cards with a mixed group of aliens. Even some Sintol were there, each making their own decisions about their cards rather than sharing a single mind. "I raise," said one Sintol, now known as 7. "I call your bluff," said a Zelax player, using the human phrase with pride. As June and Sun continued their walk, they overheard a group of young officers, some human, some alien, planning a mission to an unexplored region. "The radiation levels are too high," said a Morkai officer. "The council says it's too dangerous." A human officer smiled at her friends. "Hold my beverage," she said, using the now galaxy-wide phrase. "I have an idea that might work." Instead of shock, the alien officers leaned in with interest. 5 years ago, they would have reported this conversation to their superiors. Now they wanted to hear the crazy human idea, because crazy human ideas often worked. That night, Jun stood alone at a viewport, looking at the stars. A Galactic Council member named Sorla joined him. "Your speech was good," the alien said. "Things have changed much since you arrived." "For the better?" Jun asked. Sorla made the gesture that was the alien equivalent of a smile. "The galaxy is certainly messier now. But yes, better. You humans push boundaries. You make us uncomfortable, but you also make us grow." Jun nodded. "That's what exploring is all about. Not just new places, but new ideas." As they stood watching the stars, both knew that when the next crisis came, and it would come, the galaxy would face it together, with careful alien planning and crazy human ideas working as one. And somewhere, someone would say, "Hold my beer," and the adventure would begin again.